The handcuffs clicked shut with a cold metallic finality that echoed through the silent pharmacy. 74-year-old Hattie Mae Robinson didn't scream. She didn't fight. She just stood there, her arthritic hands trembling behind her back, staring at the spilled contents of her purse on the linoleum floor. The young officer smirked, holding up a bottle of prescription pills like a trophy hunter. He thought he'd just taken down a supplier. He thought he was a hero. He had no idea that the phone call Hattie was begging to make wasn't to a lawyer, it was to the assistant director of the FBI. And by the time the sun set, Officer Kyle Miller would wish he had never been born. The pain in Hattie Mae Robinson's left hip was a dull rhythmic throb, a constant reminder that 74 years of life came with a steep tax. But Hattie was not a woman who complained. She was a woman of routine, of starch-pressed Sunday hats, and of an unshakable dignity that had survived Jim Crow, the civil rights movement, and the slow creeping gentrification of her beloved neighborhood in West Philadelphia. It was Tuesday, and Tuesday meant the pharmacy. "Come on now, legs," she whispered to herself, stepping off the number 34 bus. The air was crisp biting with the onset of November. The neighborhood had changed. The corner store where she used to buy penny candy for her son Isaiah was now a boutique coffee shop selling $5 lattes. The old barber shop was a dog grooming spa, but Henderson's pharmacy remained a stubborn relic of the old days, sandwiched between a yoga studio and a high-end vintage clothing store. Hattie adjusted her wool coat, clutching her purse tight against her side. Inside that purse was a slip of paper that kept her going, her prescription for oxycodone, strictly managed for her chronic sciatica, and the lingering pain from a cancer surgery 3 years prior. It was a humiliating necessity. She hated the pills, hated the fog they put her in, but she hated being bedridden more. She had a church choir to lead and grandbabies to spoil. Inside Henderson's, the fluorescent lights hummed with a familiar buzz. The air smelled of rubbing alcohol and peppermint. "Morning, Mrs. Robinson," Gary Henderson called out from behind the high counter. Gary was a good man, balding and perpetually tired, but he had taken over the shop from his father and treated the elders with respect. "Good morning, Gary. How's that little girl of yours? She get over that flu yet?" Hattie asked, shuffling toward the counter, leaning heavily on her cane. "She's right as rain, thanks to that ginger tea recipe you gave us." Gary smiled, already reaching for her file. "Just the usual refill today." "Just the usual. And maybe a pack of those peppermint hard candies if you got 'em fresh." As Gary typed away at his computer, the bell above the door chimed. A gust of cold wind swept in, followed by 2 uniformed police officers. Hattie felt a reflexive stiffening in her spine, a generational trauma that didn't need a reason to flare up. She glanced over her shoulder. Officer Kyle Miller was new to the precinct. He was young, broad-shouldered, with a jawline he jutted out like a weapon, and eyes that scanned the room, not to protect, but to hunt. His partner, Officer David Rossi, looked older bored, and was already drifting toward the magazine rack. Miller, however, didn't relax. He stood by the door, thumbs hooked into his tactical vest, watching. His gaze swept over the greeting card aisle, the vitamins, and landed squarely on Hattie. He didn't see a grandmother. He didn't see a retired school librarian. He saw a target in a high-crime transition zone. He saw an old black woman at a pharmacy counter in a bulky coat, whispering to the pharmacist. "Problem with the insurance, Mrs. Robinson." Gary frowned, tapping his screen. "System is lagging again. It might be 10 minutes. "I got time, baby. I'll just sit right here," Hattie said, pointing to the waiting chairs near the blood pressure machine. She moved slowly, feeling Miller's eyes on her the entire way. It was a physical weight, like a heavy hand on her shoulder. She sat down, pulling a small Bible from her purse, to pass the time. A moment later, the door opened again. A young man walked in, hoodie pulled up skinny jeans, looking jittery. Hattie recognized him instantly. It was Leo. He was a neighborhood kid, barely 20, who had fallen hard into the opioid crisis that was sweeping through the streets. He looked sick, his skin pale and clammy. He wasn't there to rob the place. He was there to buy Pedialyte. Hattie knew his mother. "Leo," Hattie called out softly. The boy jumped, turning to her with wide, terrified eyes. "Mrs. Robinson, I didn't see you." "Pull that hood down, son. You know better," she scolded, gently patting the empty seat beside her. Leo hesitated, glancing nervously at Officer Miller by the door, then shuffled over. "I'm sick, Mrs. Robinson. Just stomach flu." "I know what kind of flu that is, Leo," she whispered, reaching into her purse. She wasn't reaching for drugs. She was reaching for a $5 bill she kept folded in a specific pocket for ministry, and a prayer card she kept for lost souls. "Here," she murmured, slipping the folded bill and the card into his shaking hand. "Get yourself some soup, and call your mama." From the front of the store, Officer Miller's eyes narrowed. From his angle, he didn't see Charity. He saw a discreet hand-to-hand exchange between a known user and an elderly woman waiting for a prescription. He nudged his partner. "You see that?" Rossi looked up from a car magazine. "See what—" "The deal," Miller said, his voice dropping to a low growl. "She just passed him product." "Miller, that's Hattie Robinson." Rossi sighed. "She's a fixture. She used to run the library." "I don't care if she runs the Vatican," Miller said, unhooking his thumb from his vest and resting his hand near his holster. "I know a drop when I see one. She's using the pharmacy as a supply point. It's the perfect cover. Who suspects the granny? Don't do it, Kyle," Rossi warned. "You're bored. Don't make a scene." But Kyle Miller wasn't bored. He was ambitious. He wanted to make detective before he was 30, and he needed busts. Big ones, or at least frequent ones. He pushed off the wall and started walking toward the waiting area. The sound of his heavy boots on the linoleum silenced the quiet hum of the store. Hattie looked up, sensing the shadow falling over her. "Everything all right, officer?" she asked, her voice steady, though her heart began to flutter against her ribs. "Stand up," Miller commanded. He didn't ask. He ordered. The silence in Henderson's pharmacy was instantaneous and absolute. Gary stopped typing. Leo froze, the $5 bill crinkling in his sweaty palm. Hattie blinked, confused. "Excuse me," I said, "stand up. Keep your hands where I can see them." Miller barked, stepping into her personal space, looming over her like a thunderhead. "Officer, what is this?" Hattie asked, clutching her Bible. "I'm waiting for my medicine." "I saw the exchange," Miller said, his voice loud enough for the customers in the back aisle to hear. "Don't play dumb with me. Hand it over." "Hand what over?" Hattie's voice trembled slightly, not from guilt, but from the sudden sharp spike of adrenaline. "I gave this boy money for soup." Miller snatched Leo's hand. He forced the boy's fingers open. The $5 bill and the laminated prayer card fell to the floor. Miller stared at them, his face flushing red. But instead of backing down, he doubled down. In his mind, he had already committed. To retreat now would be a sign of weakness. "Where's the stash?" Miller demanded, turning his aggression fully onto Hattie. "You passed him the cash. That means you're holding the product. Stand up." "Officer Miller," Gary Henderson shouted from behind the counter, slamming his hand down. "That is enough. That is Mrs. Robinson. She has been coming here for 30 years. "Back off, Henderson, unless you want an obstruction charge," Miller yelled back, never taking his eyes off Hattie. He grabbed Hattie's arm, the left one the side with the bad shoulder, and yanked her upward. A sharp cry of pain escaped Hattie's lips as her joint screamed in protest. "My arm! You're hurting me!" "Stop resisting," Miller shouted, spinning her around. "I'm not resisting." Hattie gasped, tears springing to her eyes from the physical agony. "I'm 74 years old. Let me go." Kyle seriously let her go. Rossi stepped in, looking around nervously. People had their phones out. The cameras were rolling. "This isn't a bust, man. It's a mistake." "I saw what I saw." Miller hissed his ego, now in the driver's seat. He couldn't be wrong. He couldn't be the rookie who accosted a grandma for no reason. He had to find something. He had to. He shoved Hattie against the blood pressure machine. "Spread 'em." "I can't," Hattie sobbed. "My hip." "Do it." He kicked her feet apart. Hattie collapsed slightly, her cane clattering to the floor. She was held up only by Miller's grip on the back of her coat. "You are making a mistake." Hattie wheezed, her cheek pressed against the cold plastic of the machine display. "My son." "I don't care about your son," Miller sneered, reaching for his handcuffs. "Is he a dealer too? Does he run the street crew while you handle the pharmacy distribution?" Hattie squeezed her eyes shut, praying for strength. "My son is a federal agent." Miller laughed. It was a cold, incredulous bark of a laugh. "Yeah, right. And I'm the King of England. They all say that. My son's a lawyer. My cousin's a judge. Save it for the booking officer." He ratcheted the cuffs onto her thin, fragile wrists. He did it tight. Too tight. "You're under arrest for distribution of a controlled substance and resisting arrest." Miller recited, enjoying the sound of his own authority. He grabbed her purse and dumped it upside down on the waiting chair. Lip balm tissues, a roll of peppermints, her wallet, and 2 orange prescription bottles tumbled out. Miller grabbed one of the bottles. He shook it. "Oxycodone. Bingo." "That is my prescription," Hattie cried out. "My name is on the bottle." Miller squinted at the label. It was indeed her name. But the date was from 2 days ago, and the bottle looked fuller than it should be. In his warped logic, he found a lifeline. "Intent to distribute," Miller said, pocketing the bottle. "You're carrying a heavy load, Grandma. You dealing your own script, that's a felony." "Gary!" Hattie screamed, panic finally setting in as Miller began to drag her toward the door. "Gary, call Isaiah. Call him now." "I'm calling." Gary was already on his cell phone, his hands shaking as he dialed. "You're done, Miller. You hear me? You are done." Miller ignored him. He marched Hattie out the door into the cold wind. He paraded her past the windows of the yoga studio and the vintage shop. He wanted the neighborhood to see. He wanted them to know he was cleaning up the streets. He shoved her into the back of the squad car. Hattie had to twist her body painfully to fit her bad hip, seizing up in a cramp that made her see stars. As Miller slammed the door, Rossi grabbed his arm. "You better be right about this, Kyle, because if you're not, the paperwork is going to be the least of your problems." Miller adjusted his vest, looking at the terrified old woman in the back seat through the wire mesh. "Trust me, Dave, I've got an instinct for this. She's dirty." He got in the driver's seat and flipped on the sirens. Not because there was an emergency, but because he wanted to make a point. In the back seat, Hattie Mae Robinson closed her eyes. She didn't cry anymore. The pain was still there, but something else was rising up to meet it. A cold, hard fury. She whispered a prayer, not for herself, but for Officer Kyle Miller. "Lord, have mercy on this boy's soul," she thought, because Isaiah is not going to leave enough of him to save. The booking area of the 19th precinct smelled of floor wax, stale coffee, and the distinct sour odor of human misery. It was a smell Hattie Mae Robinson had encountered before, not as a criminal, but as a mother who had once had to pick up neighborhood boys who had lost their way. She never thought she would be the one breathing it in from the wrong side of the counter. Officer Kyle Miller paraded her in like he had captured a cartel kingpin. He kept a firm grip on her upper arm, his fingers digging into the soft wool of her coat, pressing into the tender flesh underneath. "Distribution possession, resisting," Miller announced loudly to the desk sergeant, a heavy-set man named O'Malley, who was nursing a lukewarm coffee and a crossword puzzle. O'Malley looked up, his eyes widening as they landed on Hattie. He lowered his reading glasses. "Miller, is that Mrs. Robinson? Suspect's name is Hattie Robinson." "Yeah," Miller said, unclipping the handcuffs. Hattie gasped as the metal released her swollen wrists, the blood rushing back into her hands with a painful prickle. "Kyle," O'Malley said, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "She organizes the policeman's ball charity drive every Christmas. She baked the pies for the precinct fundraiser last year. Well, turns out she's got a side hustle," Miller said, slamming the bag of evidence, the single bottle of oxycodone, and the $5 bill onto the high counter. "Caught her passing cash to a junkie at Henderson's. Found the pills on her, open and shut." Hattie stood straight. Her hip was screaming a hot wire of pain running down her leg, but she refused to hunch over. She fixed her collar. She smoothed her grey hair. "Sergeant O'Malley," Hattie said, her voice calm but raspy, "I would like to make my phone call." "Process her first," Miller interrupted. "Print's mugshot, the works. She can call her lawyer after she's in the cage." "I don't need a lawyer, Officer Miller," Hattie said, turning her gaze slowly toward the young man. Her eyes were brown and deep, filled with a history he couldn't begin to comprehend. "I need to call my son." Miller laughed again, shaking his head. "The federal agent, yeah, sure. We'll get right on that. Move it." The next hour was a slow, deliberate exercise in humiliation. Miller made her take off her coat. He made her remove her shoes. He watched with a smirk as she struggled to bend over to untie her orthopedic laces, her joints stiff and agonizingly painful. When she couldn't get back up, he didn't help her. He let her struggle for a full minute before O'Malley finally came around the counter to hoist her up. "Sorry, Hattie," O'Malley muttered, avoiding her eyes. "Don't you apologize for him, Thomas," Hattie whispered. "He's going to need every prayer he can get." They pressed her arthritic fingers onto the glass scanner. They shoved a placard with a number into her hands. 749021. "Chin up. Look at the camera." "Stop shaking," Miller commanded. The flash blinded her. Finally, they led her to the holding cell. It was a concrete box with a steel bench and a toilet in the corner that offered no privacy. There was one other woman in there, a young girl with matted hair who was sleeping off a high on the floor. "Get comfortable," Miller said, as he slid the barred door shut. The lock engaged with a heavy clack. "I'll go write up the report. Maybe then you can call your imaginary Fed son." He walked away, whistling. Hattie sat on the cold steel bench. She closed her eyes. She didn't panic. She went to a place in her mind she used to go to during the marches in the 60s, a place of fortress-like calm. She thought about Isaiah. She remembered him as a boy, skinny and bookish, getting bullied for reading on the stoop. She remembered telling him, "The world is going to try to break you, Zay. You have to be harder than the world, but softer than a stone." He had listened. He had studied. He had gone to law school, then Quantico. He had risen through the ranks with a ferocity that scared even her sometimes. He wasn't just an agent. He was a force of nature. Hattie looked at the payphone on the wall inside the cell. It was broken, the cord severed. She looked at O'Malley, who was back at his desk. "Thomas," she called out, "my hip is seizing up. I need water, and I need that phone call." O'Malley looked at Miller, who was typing furiously at a desk across the room. Then he looked at Hattie. He sighed, picked up a cordless precinct phone, and walked over to the bars. 2 minutes, Hattie. Don't make me regret this." He handed her the phone through the bars. Hattie's fingers trembled as she dialed the number. She didn't dial a cell phone. She dialed a direct, secure line. It rang once, twice. Special Agent Robinson's office. A crisp, professional voice answered. It was his assistant, Sarah. "Sarah, baby," Hattie said, her voice finally cracking. "It's Hattie. Mrs. Robinson." The tone shifted instantly from professional to warm. "Is everything okay? Isaiah is in a briefing with the director, but—" "Sarah, listen to me closely," Hattie said, tears finally spilling over her cheeks. "I need you to get him. Get him now. I'm at the 19th precinct in West Philly. I've been arrested." There was a silence on the line. A silence so profound it felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. "Arrested?" Sarah's voice was ice cold. "For what?" "Dealing drugs," Hattie whispered. "They took my pain meds. They have me in a cage, Sarah. I'm in a cage." "Stay on the line," Sarah said. "Do not hang up. FBI Field Office, Philadelphia Division, High Value Crimes Unit. The conference room was soundproofed, climate-controlled, and tense. Isaiah Robinson stood at the head of the mahogany table. At 45, Isaiah was an imposing figure. He was 6'3", built like a linebacker, who had transitioned into a marathon runner, lean, powerful, and impeccably dressed in a charcoal Tom Ford suit. He was currently briefing the team on an upcoming RICO indictment against a trafficking ring moving through the I-95 corridor. Seated to his right was Assistant Special Agent in Charge ASAC, Robert Vance. "The wiretaps confirm the shipment drops tonight," Isaiah was saying, his voice a smooth, commanding baritone. "We move at 0300. I want HRT on standby for breach, and I want—" The door to the conference room burst open. Every head turned. You didn't just burst into a briefing led by Isaiah Robinson. It was Sarah. Her face was pale, her hands clutching a tablet. She walked straight to Isaiah, ignoring the stunned looks of the other agents. "Sarah, we are in the middle of—" She didn't speak. She simply handed him the phone she was holding, pressing the unmute button on the screen. "Mom," Isaiah said into the phone, his brow furrowing. "Mom, talk to me." Through the speaker, the entire room heard the background noise of a police station, the squawk of radios, the slamming of doors, and the unmistakable shaky breathing of Hattie Robinson. "Isaiah." Hattie's voice was small. "They hurt my arms, eh? They put me in the cell with the drug addicts. They said I was dealing." The temperature in the conference room seemed to drop 20 degrees in a single second. Isaiah Robinson went perfectly still. It was the stillness of a predator before the strike. His eyes, usually sharp and analytical, turned into black voids. "Who?" Isaiah asked. One word. Quiet. Deadly. "Officer Miller, 19th Precinct. He took my purse. He pushed me against the machine." Isaiah looked up at the room. 12 highly trained federal agents were watching him. They saw the change. They saw the professional mask slip, revealing the son who would burn the world down for the woman on the other end of the line. "Mum," Isaiah said, his voice terrifyingly calm. "I am coming. Keep the phone." He hung up. He handed the phone back to Sarah. "Boss," ASAC, Vance asked cautiously. Isaiah adjusted his cufflinks. He looked at Vance. "Cancel the briefing." "Cancel it. But the RICO case." "The RICO case can wait an hour," Isaiah said. He walked to the whiteboard, picked up a marker, and capped it with a snap that echoed like a gunshot. "My mother, a 74-year-old retired librarian and Sunday school teacher, has just been arrested for narcotics distribution by a beat cop at the 19th. He turned to the room. "Get the SUVs," Isaiah ordered. "All of them." "All of them?" one agent asked. Isaiah walked to the door, grabbing his coat. I want the public corruption unit. I want the civil rights division lawyers. I want the on-call medical team, and get the U.S. attorney on the phone. Tell him I am filing an emergency motion for immediate release, and I'm preparing federal deprivation of rights charges." "Isaiah," Vance said, standing up. "If you go down there angry, it's going to be a mess. Let me handle—" Isaiah stopped. He turned back to his friend. "I'm not angry, Bob. I'm efficient, and I'm going to educate the 19th precinct on the precise definition of a bad day." He tapped his earpiece. "Sarah called the Philadelphia chief of police. Tell him to meet me at the 19th. Tell him if he isn't there in 20 minutes, I'm launching an audit of his entire department's evidence locker starting tomorrow morning." "Yes, sir," Sarah said, already dialing. Isaiah strode out of the office, his coat billowing behind him. 10 agents scrambled to follow, grabbing tactical vests and raid jackets, not because they needed them for a raid, but because they knew that when Isaiah Robinson moved, you moved with him. The 19th precinct. Officer Kyle Miller was feeling good. He was drinking an energy drink, typing up his report with a flourish. He had already text-messaged his girlfriend about the big bust. "Found a stash of opioids," he had typed. "Street value prob $500, taking a dealer off the street." Rossi, his partner, was sitting at the desk across from him, looking pale. "Kyle, I'm telling you." Something feels off. Henderson, the pharmacist, was screaming about her son. "Let him scream," Miller scoffed. "If her son was anyone important, he would have been here by now. It's been 40 minutes. No one is coming for Hattie." Just then, the ground seemed to vibrate. It started as a low hum, then grew into the roar of engines. O'Malley looked up from the front desk. "What the hell is that?" Through the front windows of the precinct, they saw them. Black Chevrolet Suburans, 4 of them, then 6, then 10. They pulled up to the curb, double parking, blocking the street mounting the sidewalk. Their lights weren't flashing. This wasn't an emergency response. This was an invasion. The doors flew open in unison. Men and women in sharp suits stepped out. Others in FBI windbreakers with "Federal Agent" emblazoned in yellow on the back. They moved with military precision, forming a perimeter securing the entrance. And in the center of them, walking with a stride that could crack pavement, was Isaiah Robinson. He wore sunglasses, despite the overcast sky. He didn't look left or right. He walked straight for the double doors of the precinct. Officer Miller stood up, confused. "Is there a terrorism threat?" The doors to the precinct swung open. Isaiah didn't stop at the desk. He didn't check in. He walked right past the stunned Sergeant O'Malley, followed by a phalanx of 6 agents and 2 lawyers carrying briefcases. "Hey!" Miller shouted, stepping out from behind his desk, his hand instinctively dropping to his belt. "You can't just walk back here. This is a restricted area." Isaiah stopped. He was 10 feet away from Miller. The room went silent. The other officers in the bullpen stood up, sensing the shift in atmospheric pressure. Isaiah took off his sunglasses slowly. He folded them and placed them in his breast pocket. He looked at Miller. He looked at the name tag. "Officer Kyle Miller," Isaiah said. His voice wasn't loud. It was barely above a conversation level, but it carried to every corner of the room. "Yeah, who are you?" Miller demanded, puffing out his chest, though he felt a sudden, inexplicable urge to run. Isaiah didn't answer him. He turned to O'Malley. "Open the cage," Isaiah said. "Sir, I can't just—" O'Malley stammered. "Open the cage." "Now wait a minute." Miller stepped forward, blocking Isaiah's path. "That prisoner is being processed for a felony. You have no jurisdiction here, whoever you are." Isaiah looked down at Miller. The height difference was only a few inches, but it felt like feet. "I am Assistant Special Agent in Charge Isaiah Robinson of the Federal Bureau of Investigation," Isaiah said. "And the woman you currently have locked in that cell, the woman you assaulted, and the woman whose civil rights you have just flagrantly violated is my mother." Miller's face went slack. The blood drained from his cheeks so fast it looked like he might faint. Miller choked. "I didn't know." "You didn't know." Isaiah stepped closer, entering Miller's personal space. "You didn't know that arresting a 74-year-old cancer survivor for picking up her prescription was a bad idea. You didn't know that denying her water was a violation of protocol. Or did you just not care because you thought she was nobody?" Isaiah turned to the agents behind him. "Agent Vance, secure the security footage from the pharmacy and the precinct lobby immediately before it gets accidentally deleted. Agent Chen, take statements from every officer in this room. If anyone lies, charge them with obstruction of justice." "Yes, sir," the agents chorused, fanning out instantly. Miller looked around wildly. His precinct was being taken over. His colleagues were backing away from him. "This is harassment," Miller squeaked. "No, Officer Miller," Isaiah said, turning his back on him to walk toward the holding cells. "This is the consequences of your own actions arriving at your front door." O'Malley scrambled to unlock the cell. The metal door slid open. Hattie was sitting on the bench, holding her hip. She looked up and saw her son. Isaiah's face softened instantly. The federal agent vanished. The boy remained. He rushed in, kneeling on the dirty concrete floor in his $3,000 suit. "Mama," he whispered, taking her hands. "I knew you'd come," Hattie said, her voice trembling. "He hurt me, Zay. He shamed me." "I know," Isaiah said, gently helping her to stand. "And I promise you by the time the sun sets today, he will never wear a badge again. Come on, let's go home." He guided her out of the cell. As they emerged into the bullpen, the front doors opened again. The chief of police rushed in, breathless, his tie askew. He saw the FBI agents dominating his station. He saw Isaiah Robinson supporting his mother. He saw the terrified face of Officer Miller. "Agent Robinson," the chief gasped. "I just got the call. There must be some misunderstanding." Isaiah stopped. He supported his mother with one arm. With the other, he pointed a finger at Kyle Miller. "There is no misunderstanding, Chief," Isaiah said. "That man is a liability, and I suggest you suspend him immediately, because my next call is to the district attorney, and my call after that is to the press." Isaiah looked at Miller one last time. "You wanted to be a hero, Officer Miller. You wanted a big bust?" Isaiah asked, cold and sharp. "Congratulations, you're famous." The waiting room at Mount Sinai Hospital was quiet, save for the rhythmic beeping of monitors and the squeak of nurses' shoes. It was a stark contrast to the chaos of the 19th precinct, but the tension was no less palpable. Hattie Mae Robinson sat on the edge of the examination bed, her left arm now encased in a heavy navy blue sling. The adrenaline had faded, leaving behind a throbbing ache deep in her shoulder socket and a profound, bone-deep exhaustion. "Doctor," Aris Thorne, a specialist usually reserved for professional athletes, lowered the clipboard. He looked at Isaiah, who was standing in the corner of the room, his suit jacket off his sleeves, rolled up, looking like a man ready to dismantle a building brick by brick. "It's a partial tear of the rotator cuff," Dr. Thorne said, his voice grave. "Specifically the supraspinatus tendon. Given her age and previous history of arthritis, this isn't just a bruise, Agent Robinson. This is a significant injury. It will require physical therapy, cortisone injections, and there is a 40% chance she will need surgery if it doesn't knit properly." Isaiah nodded once. He didn't look at the doctor. He looked at his mother. "Did you document the bruising on her wrists?" "I did," Thorne confirmed. "Deep tissue contusions consistent with excessive force. The handcuffs were ratcheted past the safety point. It was punitive, not procedural." "Thank you, Doctor. Please compile the full report and have it sent to my office by morning." When the doctor left, Isaiah sat beside his mother. He took her good hand. "I'm sorry, Mama. I'm so sorry I wasn't there to stop it." Hattie squeezed his hand. "You're here now, Zay. But that boy, that police officer, he's going to lie. I saw it in his eyes. He's scared, and scared men lie." "Let him lie," Isaiah said, a dark calmness settling over his features. "Lies leave a paper trail. The 19th Precinct, Captain's office." Captain Marcus Sterling was a man who prided himself on running a tight ship. He was 3 years from retirement, dreaming of a fishing boat in the Keys. Now he was watching his retirement burn down in real time. Across the desk sat Officer Kyle Miller. Miller had lost his earlier swagger. He was pale, his leg bouncing nervously. Beside him was his union representative, a thick-necked man named Frank Russo, who looked like he chewed gravel for breakfast. "So let me get this straight," Captain Sterling said, rubbing his temples. "You initiated a stop and frisk based on a suspected hand-to-hand transaction. You found no cash on the suspect. You found a valid prescription bottle in her name. And yet you proceeded to use force on a 74-year-old woman." "She resisted Cap," Miller said, his voice sounding thin. "She pulled away. I followed protocol, and the pills the bottle looked full. Too full. I suspected she was refilling it with street supply." "You suspected?" Sterling slammed his hand on the desk. "You're not a chemist, Miller. You don't verify pharmaceuticals by shaking the bottle. And now I have the assistant director of the FBI's field office sitting in the lobby with a team of forensic accountants and a civil rights attorney. It's an intimidation tactic," Russo, the union rep, interjected smoothly. "They're trying to big league us." Miller made a judgment call in a high-crime area. "We stick to the story. Probable cause resistance, necessary force. The blue wall holds Captain. If we throw Miller under the bus, the whole precinct looks weak." Sterling looked at Miller. He saw the arrogance still lurking beneath the fear. He saw a liability. But Russo was right about one thing. If they admitted fault instantly, the lawsuit would bankrupt the city. "You're on administrative desk duty until the IA investigation clears," Sterling grunted. "Surrender your gun and badge. Go home. Stay off social media." Miller stood up, jaw tight. He felt like a victim. He was doing his job, protecting the streets, and because he snagged the wrong guy's mum, he was being crucified. "This is temporary, Kyle," Russo whispered as they walked out. "The union's got your back. We'll paint her as uncooperative. We'll dig up dirt on the sun. Everyone has skeletons." Miller nodded. "Yeah. She was shady, Frank. I know what I saw. I'll be vindicated." He truly believed it. He was the hero of his own movie, and this was just the part where the hero faced adversity. The war room Isaiah didn't go home. He went back to the Federal Building. It was 9:00 p.m. His team was still there. "Status," Isaiah commanded, walking into the bullpen. Agent Sarah clicked a remote, bringing up a timeline on the large screens. "We pulled the security footage from Henderson's pharmacy," Sarah said. "We also subpoenaed the cloud data from the store's server before the local PD could lose it." On the screen, the video played. It was high definition. It showed Hattie sitting. It showed Leo. It showed the gentle passing of the $5 bill. It showed Miller storming in like a linebacker. "Look at the timestamp," Isaiah pointed out. "Miller enters at 10:14 a.m. He engages my mother at 10:14:30. He has her in cuffs by 10:15. 30 seconds. He didn't ask questions. He didn't investigate. We also pulled Miller's disciplinary jacket. Agent Vance said, sliding a thick file across the table. He's been with the force for 2 years. 6 complaints. 4 for excessive force. 2 for racial profiling. All dismissed by Internal Affairs as unsubstantiated. They're unsubstantiated because no one had the resources to fight back, Isaiah said, flipping through the file. He stopped at a name. Tyrone Banks. A 19-year-old kid Miller had hospitalized 6 months ago during a traffic stop. Broken orbital socket. Miller claimed the kid lunged. The body cam had malfunctioned. Find Tyrone Banks, Isaiah ordered. And find the other 5 complainants. We aren't just trying him for my mother. We're building a pattern of practice. We're going to invoke 18 U.S. Code, Section 242, deprivation of rights under color of law. That's a heavy lift, boss, Vance warned. Juries hate convicting cops on federal charges. They won't hate it when they see the pharmacy tape, Isaiah said. But we need more. Who is the junkie, the boy my mother helped? Leo Coletti, 20 years old. Known history of usage. He's in the wind, boss, scared of the cops. Find him, Isaiah said. He is the key witness. Miller claims he saw a drug deal. Leo can prove it was charity. If we find Leo, we destroy Miller's probable cause. If we destroy probable cause, the arrest becomes a kidnapping. The leak by the next morning, the narrative had already started to shift. The police union had released a vague statement about an ongoing investigation into a narcotics incident involving a federal agent's family member, subtly implying that Isaiah was using his influence to cover up a crime. It was a smart play. It muddied the waters. But Isaiah Robinson was smarter. At 10 a.m., a leak occurred. It didn't come from the FBI directly, that would be illegal. It came from an anonymous source who sent the pharmacy security footage to the Philadelphia Inquirer, CNN, and a prominent YouTube crime commentator named Justice Watch. The video went live at 10:15 a.m. By 10:30 a.m., it had 2 million views. The internet did not see a narcotics incident. They saw a terrified grandmother giving money to a sick boy. They saw a hulking officer yank her arm out of the socket. They heard the audio crisp and clear. I'm 74 years old. Let me go. The hashtag justice for Hattie began to trend globally. At his apartment, Kyle Miller was sitting on his couch nursing a bear despite the early hour. His phone buzzed. It was his girlfriend, Amber. Kyle, she sounded frantic. Have you seen Twitter? I told you I'm staying off social media, Miller grumbled. Turn on the TV, now. Miller grabbed the remote. Every channel was playing the video. His face twisted in a sneer as he shoved Hattie was frozen on the screen. The chyron read, Brutality in the pharmacy, grandmother assaulted. Miller felt his stomach drop. It looks worse than it was, he stammered to the empty room. The camera angle is bad. But then his phone buzzed again. A text from Amber. I can't believe you lied to me. You said she attacked you. You said she was a kingpin. I'm going to stay at my sister's. Amber, he yelled at the phone, but she had already blocked him. This was the beginning of the slide, but the crash was yet to come. 2 days later, the hard karma began to manifest not as a sudden lightning strike, but as a slow, suffocating constriction of Kyle Miller's life. The suspension Miller was called back into Captain Sterling's office. This time, the union rep Frank Russo looked less confident. He was sweating. The footage is damning, Kyle, Sterling said, refusing to look Miller in the eye. The mayor is on my ass. The police commissioner is on my ass. and there are protesters, about 500 of them, standing outside the precinct right now, chanting Mrs. Robinson's name. I followed procedure, Miller insisted, though his voice cracked. You are being placed on unpaid suspension, effective immediately, Sterling said, sliding a paper across the desk. And the district attorney is convening a grand jury next week to consider assault charges. Unpaid. Miller stood up. I have a mortgage. I have truck payments. You should have thought about that before you played cowboy with a senior citizen, Sterling snapped. Get out of my office. Miller walked out of the precinct through the back door, hood pulled up, but the paparazzi found him. Camera flashes blinded him. Questions were shouted like accusations. Officer Miller, do you hate the elderly? Officer Miller, are you proud of breaking a woman's arm? He ran to his truck. He found the tires slashed. On the windshield, in red lipstick, someone had written, Bully. The financial ruin. Karma has a way of hitting the wallet first. With his pay suspended, Miller's life of credit-fueled comfort collapsed. The bank called about his truck. His landlord, who had seen the video, suddenly remembered a clause in the lease about conduct unbecoming and nuisance, and served him an eviction notice. But the real blow came from the lawsuit. Isaiah didn't just file a complaint. He filed a federal civil rights lawsuit naming Miller personally alongside the city. Usually the city pays for the cops. But Isaiah's lawyers found a loophole. Qualified immunity doesn't protect an officer if they knowingly violate clearly established statutory rights. By proving Miller ignored the prescription bottle and ignored the lack of evidence, they were piercing the corporate veil. Miller was being sued for $5 million. His assets were frozen pending the hearing. He couldn't even buy groceries. The desperation. It was day 4 of the suspension. Miller was sitting in his darkened apartment, drinking cheap whiskey. The power had been cut an hour ago. He'd missed the bill, and with his accounts frozen, he couldn't pay it. He was spiraling. He blamed Hattie. He blamed Isaiah. But mostly, he blamed Leo the junkie. If that kid hadn't been there, if he admits it was a deal, Miller muttered to himself. His mind warped by stress and alcohol latched onto a dangerous idea. If he could find Leo, if he could squeeze Leo, maybe he could get the kid to testify that it was a drug deal. That Hattie did give him pills. If Leo confessed, the video wouldn't matter. It would be a justified bust. Miller grabbed his keys. He knew where the junkies hung out. He still had his backup piece, a small .38 revolver he kept in his ankle holster. He hadn't surrendered that one. He was going to fix this. The trap Miller drove his slashed-tire truck on the rims to the underpass on 52nd Street. He waded through the tents and the trash, flashing a flashlight into people's faces. "Where's Leo?" he barked at a terrified woman. "Where is he?" "I don't know, man. He's gone." "He's not gone. Tell me." He grabbed the woman's jacket. "Hey!" a voice called out from the shadows. Miller spun around. Standing there wasn't a junkie. It was a man in a black trench coat. Then another. Then another. Floodlights blinded him, snapping on from 3 directions. "Kyle Miller," a voice boomed over a loudspeaker. "Drop the weapon and put your hands on your head." Miller squinted. Through the glare he saw the FBI windbreakers. He saw the SWAT shields. And walking toward him, calm and terrifying, was Isaiah Robinson. "You," Miller gasped. "You followed me. We've had a surveillance team on you since the moment you left the precinct," Isaiah said, stepping into the light. "We knew you'd try to find the witness. We knew you were dumb enough to try to intimidate him." "I just wanted to talk to him," Miller yelled. "With an unregistered .38 in your ankle holster," Isaiah asked. "That's witness tampering, Kyle. That's stalking. And since you're carrying a firearm while under a restraining order regarding the investigation, that's a federal felony." Miller's knees gave out. He dropped to the muddy ground. "Leo isn't here, Kyle," Isaiah said, standing over him like a judge. "Leo is in a private rehab facility in Vermont. I paid for it myself. He's clean, he's safe, and he has already given a sworn deposition that you assaulted my mother for giving him lunch money." Isaiah signaled to his team. "Cuff him." This time, the handcuffs weren't the standard police issue. They were federal steel. As they dragged Miller away, he looked at Isaiah, tears streaming down his face. "I'm sorry. Tell her I'm sorry." Isaiah looked at him with zero sympathy. "You're not sorry you did it, Miller. You're sorry you picked a fight with a family that fights back." The hearing 3 months later. The courtroom was packed. Hattie sat in the front row. Her arm was out of the sling, but she still rubbed the shoulder occasionally. She looked elegant in her Sunday hat. Kyle Miller sat at the defense table. He looked 10 years older. He had lost 20 pounds. His hair was thinning. He wore a cheap suit that didn't fit. The plea deal was read aloud. "On the count of deprivation of rights under color of law, the defendant pleads guilty. On the count of witness, tampering, the defendant pleads guilty." The judge, a stern woman named Justice Halloway, looked over her spectacles. "Mr. Miller, you took an oath to protect the vulnerable. Instead, you preyed on them to feed your own ego. You mistook kindness for criminality because of your own prejudice, and when caught, you tried to destroy the evidence." She banged the gavel. "I sentence you to 8 years in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release. You are permanently barred from holding any position in law enforcement or security. Remand is immediate." The bailiff moved in. The click of the handcuffs echoed through the room, the same sound that had started it all. Miller turned to look at the gallery. He saw his former colleagues who refused to meet his eyes. He saw his ex-girlfriend, who was sitting on the other side of the aisle. And he saw Hattie. He expected to see hate. He expected to see triumph. But Hattie Mae Robinson just looked at him with a sad, heavy pity. She didn't smile. She didn't cheer. She just watched a young man who had thrown his life away for nothing. As they led him out the side door, Hattie stood up. "It's over, Mama," Isaiah said, putting his arm around her. "It's over," Hattie agreed. She took a deep breath. "Come on, Isaiah. Let's go get some peppermint candy. But let's go to a different store this time." Isaiah smiled, the first genuine smile in months. "I know a place." The price of healing justice had been served in the courtroom, but the body keeps the score. For Hattie Mae Robinson, the weeks following the trial were a grueling marathon. The tear in her rotator cuff didn't require surgery, but the physical therapy was a distinct form of torture. 3 times a week, Hattie gritted her teeth in the rehab center gym, sweat beading on her forehead as she struggled to lift her arm past her shoulder. Isaiah was there for every session. He had taken a leave of absence from the bureau, trading his tactical vest for a plastic chair in the corner of the gym. He watched her wince with a look of profound guilt etched onto his face. "You don't have to stay." "Zay," Hattie huffed during a particularly painful set. "I'm not an invalid." "I know," Isaiah said, handing her a water bottle. "But I missed too many years worrying about the country. I can spend a few months worrying about you." Slowly, the physical strength returned. But more importantly, the psychological scars began to fade. The dignity that Officer Miller had tried to strip away was being pieced back together, reinforced by a community that now treated her like royalty, the Robinson Protocol. While Hattie healed, Isaiah ensured the legal victory wasn't just symbolic. In a high-rise conference room overlooking City Hall, the city attorney tried to slide a check for $2 million across the mahogany table. "No admission of guilt," the attorney said smoothly. "We seal the records. We move on." Isaiah didn't even look at the check. Keep your money." "Excuse me." The attorney blinked. "That is double the standard payout." "We don't want a payout. We want a policy change," Isaiah stated, sliding a thick document back across the table. "We are calling it the Robinson Protocol. It requires mandatory de-escalation training for the 19th Precinct and mental health professionals present during arrests of seniors. You sign this into policy, or we go to trial and I put your department's failures on national television for 6 weeks." The city folded. 3 days later, the police commissioner issued a televised apology to Hattie by name. The protocol became the new standard. Redemption in the mail. 6 months after the arrest, a letter arrived at Hattie's house from the Green Mountain Recovery Center in Vermont. It was from Leo, the young man whose drug deal had started it all. "Dear Mrs. Robinson, Agent Robinson came to see me before he sent me here. He told me you didn't blame me. I've been clean for 180 days. I work in the greenhouse now. It's quiet here. I just wanted to say thank you. You gave me $5 for soup, but you really gave me my life back. I promise I won't waste it this time." Hattie wiped a tear from her cheek and tucked the letter into her Bible. "You see that, Lord," she whispered. "You work in mysterious ways." Karma's cold cell. While Leo found peace, Kyle Miller found hell. Incarcerated at Federal Correctional Institution, Fort Dix Miller was placed in protective custody, a nice name for solitary confinement. As a former cop, he was a target. He spent 23 hours a day in a 6x8 cell, shunned by gangs and guards alike. One afternoon, while mopping the hallways of the segregation unit, Miller saw a news segment on the guard station TV. It was the 1-year anniversary of the incident. The screen showed Hattie Mae Robinson cutting the ribbon on a new building. She looked radiant, strong, and happy. "Look at that Miller," the guard laughed. "That's the grandma you tried to take down. She's a hero, and you're mopping floors." Miller stared at the screen. The denial that had shielded his ego finally cracked. He wasn't the victim. He was just a bully who had picked the wrong day to be cruel. He looked down at the dirty mop water. It was grey and murky, just like his future. The last dance. The Hattie Mae Robinson Center for Community Outreach opened on a crisp autumn evening. The settlement money had funded a safe haven for the neighborhood. Isaiah stood in the back, watching his mother work the crowd. She was hugging children, laughing with elders, and looking more alive than she had in years. "You did good, boss," Agent Vance said, standing beside him. "She did the heavy lifting," Isaiah smiled. "I just made the phone calls." Hattie waved him over. The jazz band struck up a slow, soulful rendition of "Stand By Me." "Mrs. Robinson, may I have this dance?" Isaiah asked, bowing theatrically. "You may, Agent Robinson." She laughed. They danced in the middle of the street, surrounded by the community they had fought to protect. The nightmare was over. The scales of justice had balanced. "I love you, Zay," she whispered, resting her head on his chest. "I love you too, Mama," Isaiah replied. "But I'm still never letting you go to the pharmacy alone again." Hattie pulled back and slapped his arm playfully. "Oh, hush. I'm Hattie Mae Robinson. I can handle myself. And that is the incredible story of how one arrogant officer's mistake led to his complete downfall and the rise of a community hero. It's a powerful reminder that you should never judge a book by its cover, and you should definitely never underestimate a mother, especially one with a son in the FBI. Karma didn't just knock on Officer Miller's door, it kicked it down with a federal warrant. Hattie Robinson proved that dignity is a weapon, and when combined with the power of family, it's unstoppable. If this story moved, you please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. Don't forget to share this with someone who needs a reminder that the good guys can still win. And make sure you subscribe so you never miss a story. What do you think? Was Miller's punishment enough? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.